Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Raising the New Earth. I'm Noah, and I'm here with Brooke and a very special guest. I'm here with Diana, and Diana Terry owns her online marketing company called Blue Steel Media. She has an amazing podcast out there called Owning Your Authenticity. She's a mother of two, and I feel like she's an overall inspiring and amazing woman in how she deals with life and motherhood. And we wanted her on our podcast. So, hi, Diana.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Really
Absolutely.
excited.
We're
Excited to have
so,
you.
yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Um, okay, well, my name's Diana Terry. I just got married a few months 2 months ago today, actually, of this recording. But
Mazel tov.
yeah. So my wife and I live in Newbury Park, California, here by Noah. And I've got two kids. My daughter's in, I call it junior high, but I've been told that ages me and it's middle school. So my
Mhm.
daughter's in middle school, and my son is actually in school with Noah's son. And yeah, so I've owned my digital marketing company for going on 6 years, and we're actually rebranding in 2023 and shifting a little bit. I still will obviously retain my current clients, but we're shifting more into the personal growth space.
Mhm.
So we're rebranding into what's called Unlearning University. And that is with the intent of unlearning the stereotypes and the boxes we were told to live in and the way we were told to eat, behave, work, whatever, that kind of forced us into something that we're not. So that's been my growth over the last about 3 or 4 years of personal growth, has been kind of unlearning the things that got me to
Mhm.
where I didn't want to be, or to where I was like, who am I? Completely confused by it. And so learning what got me here can help me to like shed those things that don't work anymore and replace them with the things that I've decided serve me and my kids and the future I want to have. So yeah, so that's what I do.
Wow, Diana, that's
I love
amazing. You said so many things that Brooke, I think, wanted to ask you about, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think I just listened to your podcast on the three things you need for a growth mindset, and like I resonated with all of those, just in that like you need to set the time, the time. It has to be a priority, and
Mm-hmm.
understand what you're working towards. And then the one that really resonated with me was the truth mindset with yourself, and that like it's very important to get brutally honest with yourself. And I just think that resonated so much, because it can be hard, right, to like look at where the places in your life that are not working, and to reflect
Mm-hmm.
it back to yourself. So just interested kind of in your journey, and like in personal growth, like what were kind of the catalysts of what kind of moved you down that path, and why you feel
Yeah,
like it's so important.
absolutely. Well, for starters, it is terrifying to have a truth mindset with yourself, because most of us, I mean, if you know, everybody has trauma, whether it's big T or little T trauma. Um, and big T trauma, for those that don't know, are defined as like major car accidents, assault, those big things that are socially acceptable trauma to label it as trauma. But little T trauma is the smaller things that happened in childhood, whether you were bullied or you had some sort of abandonment with your parents, growing up in dysfunctional homes. So it's very scary to get brutally honest with yourself, but it is a catalyst for change, and it is a catalyst for personal safety. Um, so that is definitely very hard. I had to go through that, and a lot of that for me and my story was triggered by coming out in my 30s. Um, I came out as gay when I was 30. And for me, it was a very weird, like, I had just taken care of my dad. He passed. And I don't know if there was some sort of release within me that was like, hey, let's find you. And then in finding me, realizing like I'm gay. And I was currently married to my children's father. So it's a big catalyst for change, but that wasn't like, that was the trigger, I think. But I really didn't start to pay attention to any of that for years because I was just following those old patterns. You get up, you go to work, you ignore anything that doesn't make you money, pay the bills, or you ignore your feelings, you ignore all of it. You just show up and make sure that everybody thinks that you're okay. And when you spend all of your energy making sure people think you're okay, you're avoiding actually being okay. So I started to just read. I've been an avid reader since I was a child, and I started to read personal growth and just trying to find myself as a single mother in my 30s, like just completely lost. And I think I just had to hit this, I hate the term rock bottom, but I had to hit this emotional bottom where I'm like, okay, this isn't working. It's just not working anymore. And I think for me, one catalyst to me being able to find my safety was meeting my wife. I met her about 4 years ago because I had support in a way I had never had before. So, when I read this book and I'm like, oh, I'm taking this virtual personal growth class. She's like, great. What do you need from me? Do you need the apartment to yourself? Like, and I had never had someone be like, love that you're spending this time not making money, not helping anyone else, literally just helping yourself. And that was so foreign for me to have chosen to put myself first and said, I'm going to either spend money on something for myself or I'm going to spend time on myself, and then have someone be like, love that for you. So that was really a catalyst. And for me, I started to do this work, and what really came up for me was learning to set boundaries. I was not raised in an environment where boundaries were allowed at all. There was a lot of, I am your parent, therefore I will have access to this forever. Whether you have kids or not, I am your parent, I have access. So for me, I started to set boundaries. With my mom was the main one. And every time I set a boundary, I got a little bit of myself back that I hadn't known before. So I got a little new version of me. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. Like, I don't feel nauseous anymore after leaving this engagement or whatever it is. So I started to set boundary after boundary after boundary. And in other ways too, I started to set boundaries with work. I started to set boundaries with friendships that weren't serving me. I went on a boundary train, man. And this is sometimes what happens when we do have this realization, like, oh, you get to set boundaries, and then you set boundaries everywhere. And a lot of people talk about this. I don't know if you've heard Glennon Doyle's podcast, but I listened to her podcast as well. And she talks about this where you go boundary, 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 barricade here, which is completely cutting someone off. And all of a sudden it's just you or you and your family, which not necessarily is a bad thing, but that's what I did. So I set boundaries. We have had to cut off certain people, certain family members that were just not emotionally safe. And that's what I tell my kids. I say, I'm not safe around this person. And they go, well, they're not going to hit you. And I said, but there's different types of safety. Mm-hmm. So I am not mentally and emotionally safe around this person because I have tried to invest in that relationship by setting boundaries. And because they have not been respected, I'm now having to choose this for myself. And so now about a year ago was when I really got to that space of like, okay, I'm super safe. I've never felt this safe in my entire life. I'm safe in my home. I'm safe with like my kids and my partner, and with work, I'm safe. And so now I've been very consciously over the last year choosing what to invite back in. So I have chosen to invite in friendships and relationships with people that have similar understandings, that believe in mutual respect and understanding. I've chosen to spend my time. I'm in a new mentorship program in the area for foster kids, connecting with people like Noah, who we have, who will have those conversations that are not like, how's the weather? How's this? That conversation's like, let's talk about your childhood, So that's kind of what got me here. And for me, boundaries were the catalyst to real growth and change. And so now I'm trying to, and when I talk to any of my friends, None of us have boundaries. And it's all the same narrative. It's, oh, well, I'm this, therefore you can't set a boundary. I am this, or I deserve access, or whatever it may be. So, so that's kind of like my purpose that I'm finding, is to helping women mostly, because we, at least for me, because I grew up here in the United States, it's a very patriarchal area. I was raised in a family that had very traditional roles, which are not bad if that's what you want. So, but that wasn't what I want. I didn't want to live that traditional role. And because I went outside of what was expected, I was, I don't know what the right word is. I was looked down upon for not taking that path. And so that's why I think a lot of women are the ones that resonate with my work, because it helps us to be like, oh, okay, I did everything. I have the husband and the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence, and I'm still not happy, and I don't know why. So that's kind of where my path is going. Yeah.
Do you feel that those boundaries were necessary in a sense that it just wasn't, if you hadn't set them, especially with family, you just wouldn't have, like, they would not have accepted
100%
the past here. Yeah.
And the thing about boundaries that a lot of people, the common misconception with boundaries is that it's a, I'm telling you how to behave thing. So that's not what boundaries are. Boundaries are not about, they're not about other people, but they do incorporate other people. Boundaries are about me. So boundaries are strictly a me thing. It is, when I have this interaction with this person, I leave, if you leave feeling drained, if you leave feeling angry every time you hang out with someone or spend time with someone, if you leave feeling unheard or whatever, if you leave feeling less than, then a boundary probably needs to be set. And what people don't understand is, it's not control. It's not, I'm trying to run away from this relationship. Boundaries are an investment in a relationship. So if I set a boundary with you, it means I can't have a relationship with you the way it currently is, because I'm not okay. But I would love to have a relationship with you, and this is the way that I can show up and it work for us. Because if I can't show up as my whole self, or if I leave feeling less than, then it's not a cohesive relationship. But if you say, okay, I can show up, but I'm uncomfortable with you. Oftentimes, like, a lot of people tell me, oh, this person just shows up at my house. They don't call first. And now, when you're in your 20s, early 20s, before you have kids and before you do all the things, sure. Like, yeah, you show up, you walk into your best friend's house. But when you get older and you maybe develop a family, or just develop your own sense of like personal time, that can feel offensive or intrusive. And so simply saying, like, I would love to have this relationship with you, but I can't have it where I need a call first. That's all. I just need a call first, because then I can be in the best headspace to connect with you. So yeah, I mean, it's an investment. And sometimes, I mean, I hate to say it, but sometimes they don't work, and a barricade needs to be drawn. And that is the case. Like, sometimes that happens, and that can be really hard.
Right. Yeah. That's part of the growth. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I saw a blog post recently that it was like, a healthy boundary looks like, when you hang out with me, like, we're going to go, I'm going to go ahead and do what I'm doing and expect you to be on time, like, or somebody who's chronically late. But like, an unhealthy boundary would be like, you need to do this, or else it's kind of like, it's not, it's like, this is what I'm doing, and what my expectations, and it's okay if you don't want to follow them, but I'm going to be doing a different action or taking an action, if it's not. So yeah. And that's where I think the key, and I think that's where maybe women do have a hard time with, like, setting those boundaries, or because it looks like they think it seems like almost like a selfish thing, or and it's really just taking back your power, right? And like and
very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and especially as women, we're told that when we do things for ourselves, it's selfish. I mean, I
Right.
remember like one of my pet peeves is they go, I mean, granted, we're in a divorced home and we both are remarried, so it's a little different. But when you're married to your kid's parent and you go, oh, my partner's babysitting. No, it's their children. They're not babysitting so you can have 1 hour of time to not be living for someone else.
Yeah.
No, they're sharing. This is your time. You have a like fundamental divine right to take care of yourself, and almost like a divine expectation to take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, then everyone else will pick and choose the parts of you that serve them, because that's what they're doing. They're taking care of themselves. And they go, if you have no boundaries and you are just open source with your energy and your time and you give to everyone else, of course I'm going to take it, because you're not telling me it's not okay.
Right.
So when I taught my daughter's in middle school now, and there's so many opportunities to learn boundaries for her. And the big thing that I tell her is, okay, you can set this boundary. You can say, this is what I'm comfortable with and this is what I'm not. But you don't get to pick and choose how they react to it. So if your friend is upset by it, she is allowed to be upset. You don't get to tell her no. You don't get to minimize her being upset. She's allowed to be upset. And you have to just make peace with the fact that, okay, I've kept myself safe. I love my friend. And we may just not agree on this. And you just have to say, okay, this works for me and that works for you. And this is how we can exist together. You don't get to control the other person's reaction to it.
Right. We can control someone else but ourselves. Absolutely. And every time you mention the word boundaries, and I know we had an episode about boundaries that really resonated with you. But now when we're talking about boundaries, and yes, they're biologically and physiologically within us, this is how our body is built. So obviously, when we communicate, and I think the word here is communication, when we communicate our emotional need for space or attention or whatever that is, that will set the boundaries in our life for us to be able to thrive. And once we clear the path to this open communication, that I believe that a lot of people are not, for some reason, not participating in that. For me, it's a necessity. I have to communicate what I want. So for me, I do it a little bit differently. Growing up in Israel, we communicate about everything. You want it, you don't want it, it's in your face, it's right there, take it or leave it, but I'll tell you what I feel. So that's, so that will serve a different boundary.
Polar opposite. Polar opposite. But now, that being said, with the way that you were raised being completely different, where did you struggle to set boundaries, having a completely opposite upbringing? Like, where did you struggle to set boundaries?
That's how she owns her own podcast. There you go, because she's asking the question. So for me, I only started setting boundaries when both Brooke and I took Dr. Zach Bush course. It was a coach's course, Journey of Intrinsic Health. And he talked about the biological boundaries within us. Only then I started I call it putting myself on the list. I make lists for everyone else but myself. Even my own list is like, shop here, get this, get that. No. How about putting 20 minutes to meditate? Noah, for me. So only after that, I experimented with no guilt, because I believe guilt is a waste of energy. No need to feel that. Just being helplessness is not part of my equation. And so only then I was like, you know what? Yep, I need you to help with this. I'm going back to school. I need you to help with that. So there were my boundaries right after that course with Dr. Zach Bush.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned the word guilt. I recently reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, understanding the difference between guilt and shame, but then also realizing that guilt can be used as a tool. So for people who don't like your boundaries, or people who are uncomfortable with the setting of them, guilt is a very powerful tool that can be used, whether intentional or it's not. It doesn't mean that they're like, I'm out to get you, but it means this is what has worked in the past to get what I want out of this relationship. So I think just being very aware and understanding of, like, guilt is, I feel bad over doing an action, and someone can use that if they need to violate your boundaries, because you can do all the work too. I use like an acronym. It's ish, and it's identify, set, and hold. So you identify the boundary that needs to be set. You set the boundary by communicating, like you said, using I statements, not them statements. And then holding it is the hardest part, because so many people set boundaries and then they go, but it's the holidays. So I have to see them, even though I told them I wouldn't if they didn't do A, B, like if I'm not safe in this way. So holding them is the other part that so many people, they do the work, they set the boundary, and then they don't hold it. And when you don't hold your boundary, you're just reinforcing the behavior that's hurting you in the first place. So that's like that other part of it. And it's hard, and because I know, Brooke, you have young children and I have older children, and drastically polar difference of where you set your boundaries. It's very different. I mean, and I didn't understand this work when my kids were little, and I really wish I had, because I gave so much in a way that just wasn't healthy for me. I was so burnt out for years. And that can transfer to your kids. They see that, whether as young as they are, they see that. And I wish I had this information. I wish I had this knowledge back then, but I didn't. So, I mean, it's interesting to look back now and be like, oh, what would I have done? How would I have taken better care of myself when my kids were that small? How do you set yours?
Well, I mean, I'm still learning it in a lot of sense, because I had her older when I was older. So I had always had like all the time in the world for myself, to be honest. I mean, in a lot of ways, like it was being single. And yeah, so it's definitely been an adjustment. And you know, I'm still, because right now I feel like I'm squeezing in times when like she's napping, which of course now like she's like to like do something like work out. And my husband is like extremely supportive. I think it's more that it's declaring, right? Like Noah was saying, like, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes, or so I do those things. But to be honest, I have a lot to learn from that, in that, like, I also think just with being, you know, at home so much over the past couple of years with us all, and like things close, like it's like I need to go and like go take a yoga class. Like I haven't done that in like a year. And like, so, and I know that will make me feel better. So I'm learning that. That being said, though, I will say, like, in other areas, just in the way that I interact with her, I can see that like the growth, like personal growth work that I've done, like just all the spiritual things, and just like the way to interact with her, and like a lot of the things that are kind of echoed in like gentle parenting is what I've heard it called, or conscious parenting. But it's like, I'll hear something that they'll say and I'm like, well, yeah, that makes sense, because an adult would need something like that too. Like, it's like getting their needs met. And so I just recognize many times that like, it's like the idea that investing in yourself and investing in personal growth is going to like multiply in so many ways of how it benefits not just yourself, but like the people very close to you as well, because you're learning how to, you know, how to, I think like it's like a ripple effect, right? Like, like they like, and I think that with my family, with boundaries too, that's what, like, emotional boundaries, it's the same thing. It's like, and I think that like, it's just that energy when it's lifted, they can pick up on that. And like, and Noah and I talked about it in our boundaries episode, but it's like, I feel like I don't get all of the drama in a lot of sense that my family, you know, from divorce, and there's just a lot there. And I just kind of like, I'm not going to participate in this. So,
but that's beautiful that you don't take on other people's hardships. And it's a beautiful lesson for our kids too. I mean, and I set boundaries with my kids, and my kids are allowed to set boundaries with me. So like, for example, my son ripped his toenail off, which I can't. He pulled the door over it. But so we left it on, and we only trim the dead toenail when he asks for it. And don't get me wrong, I would love to go in there and just cut that, chop so it's not caught on his socks or whatever, but he's uncomfortable with it. And he said to me the other day, He asked me to trim it. I cut one thing and he was like, oh, no, stop. And I said, this has to be done because now this is a safety thing. Like, if this will rip if we don't, it has to be done. And he's like, but it's my toe. I said, you're right. It is your toe. But mom is making this decision for your safety. And after that, you can decide what we do. And little things like we knock on their doors. I don't just barge into their rooms.
Right.
Because they
Yeah.
need space. They need space that feels like just theirs. My son will, if he has a hard time, he'll go in his room and be like, I might go to bed right now. It's 6:30. You are more than welcome to do that. If you'd like to come out and rejoin us when you feel better, absolutely. So, and these are things that were never in my growing up, even in my adult experience. Like, to be like, I need 5 minutes alone. Oh, well, I see. You just can't show up for us, or blah, blah. I mean, the guilt and all of it. I've had to unpack so much of it. And in doing that work, it's you have to like start to value yourself. If you don't have that value intrinsically, if it wasn't built up in you intentionally by your parents or your surroundings, you have to find that value in yourself and then like declare it and be like, no, I'm not going to show up as 10% of myself because I gave you the other 90. I'm going to give me the 90 and you get the 10% that is safe and cared for and happy to show up and help. So
Right.
it's been a big flop for me. But
Yeah.
it's leaps and bounds, and it's helped me be a better parent, a better partner. I mean, in every aspect, better in business because I'm setting healthy. I'm not overworked because I'm like,
Right.
oh, I feel this like innate need to like give. I'm like, no, I give when they pay me because that's what I do. This is my job. So as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of boundaries I had to set with myself. And that's even harder than setting boundaries with other people. Setting them with yourself, whether it's time on the phone, working time so that I can show up for my kids when they're here. That's I think is harder than setting boundaries with other people.
And you mentioned your son who is 10, and I love the tools that you use with him to cope with emotions and restlessness. Can you share some of those tools with our listeners?
Yeah. So my son has he has some anxiety. And so for him, we do a couple different things. We have used tapping when he's in the space for it. He's not always in the space. So if people don't know what tapping is, it's a way of like repeating positive affirmations while tapping on certain pressure points in the body. And it gives your brain a pattern interrupt. So it helps you prevent from spiraling into the normal anxiety path. We use affirmations. His affirmation is, I am safe, I am loved, or I am safe, I am secure, I am loved. And we've recently changed it to, I am unconditionally loved. To understand, like, really, you're not just loved because you're loved in this moment. You're loved whether you screw up or not. And if he's having a bout of like, I'm really angry, he is allowed to punch certain things to get it out. So he's allowed to punch a pillow or he has a punching bag. So it's little things like if he gets angry and slams the door, I don't let that go. I go in and I say, listen, you are allowed to feel angry. You are allowed to be upset. How we choose to do things in response to that, though, those are choices. And I know it's hard to make those choices in that moment, but we don't slam doors. That one's not a safe choice. Our safe choices are hitting the pillow, taking a moment we have built like a little safe place in his closet, which has like a bean bag and some safe things for him. So you are allowed to take a time out in there. You are allowed to hit the pillow. You're allowed to scream. You're allowed to take a 5-minute walk outside by yourself, or I will go with you if you feel safer that way. These are the things that are allowed because the action is a choice. The feeling is not. You are allowed to feel anything and everything, but how you choose to act in the face of that is a choice, and choices have consequences. Some are good. They help us get it out, and some are, not the best choice. And then we learn from that.
And then you give him also fidgets, right? You have some fidgets for him?
Yes. And the new one that I want to get, there's something called a calm strip. Have you heard of these?
No.
So it's a sticker that has a texture, almost like a soft sandpaper. And you can put them on things. And when you are feeling anxious in the middle of a test, like he could put it on his desk at school or whatever. So that's a new one. But we do fidgets. So I was sharing with Noah, sometimes when he's having, like when we go back, because our therapist told us, you can't always have those conversations about what happened in the moment because his brain is in fight or flight. I need to be safe. But 30 minutes later, when he's calm, I'll be like, hey buddy, can we go talk for a minute? We'll go in his room, and he has the pop it things that just pop
Hmm.
through on the other
Mhm.
side. He has this giant one that we got at the street fair. It's like Godzilla or something. And we'll sit there, and I say, do you mind if we just pop this together? And he's like, okay. So we pop together, and then I'll ask him questions like, hey, when you were having a hard time earlier, can you tell me what triggered that, or like where that felt in your body? Like what felt weird in your body when you did? And he will completely open up to anything, because he's now calm. He's not in fight or flight or fawn or freeze or whichever one is triggering him. But he's also like not focusing on like, oh, I have to be vulnerable. He's like, I am safe, I'm entertained, and now I can share. So that's been really helpful with him.
That's
My daughter
huge.
will just share everything,
Yeah.
but my
Yeah.
son needs something. His brain just goes so fast and so quick, and he just
Yeah.
needs something to slow him down. So when we do that, one, we're doing it together, and two, it's just whatever it is, it helps him to like take a breath and be present, which is really helpful.
Yeah. We do a lot of work with our kids as well. And like, every child is different. So for example, with our girl, with work, we really worked with her on verbalizing what she feels, because she just shuts down. She's so sensitive and so
Mhm.
overstimulated so easily that she shuts down. And then slowly it's like, you gotta tell me what you feel. I can't read your mind. So first we hug her, we let her calm down, and then we ask her what she feels. And then slowly, I would say 2 years ago, she started really verbalizing, I feel angry or I feel frustrated, by big words, right? And with
Yeah.
our son, I really see, we practice Kabbalah in our house, and we even had a Kabbalistic astrologist in our previous episode, and we believe in previous lifetimes. So for example, when my son was a fetus in my stomach, I had really vivid dreams about war, bloody war, though, from different decades, different eras, swords, like that. And these were consistent dreams that I had with him. And with every child, I had different dreams that were recurring. I
Mhm.
knew they weren't mine. It's almost like a message from the divine of where is his soul is coming from.
Mhm.
So for our son, I saw a lot of aggression, but I also knew, doing Kabbalistic astrology, I knew what my job was as his mother in this lifetime. So he came very empowered, ready to attack everything and everyone. And my job was to have him tap into his spirituality. And the work that I do with him is the duality. So I know he hears the bad voice that tells him, go attack, be angry, do this, do that. But I also know, being a Gemini, it's almost like, and you hear himself talking to the other
Mhm.
part of himself. And the other side is like, okay, relax, you're good, you're safe. So my work with him is, who are you listening to right now? Don't
Mhm.
let him win over your true soul. Don't let that
Yes.
part of you win. And for him, it's about taking a moment. He walks outside, he goes to our garden, he goes outside, and right away he comes back, he takes a breath. He said, I'm sorry. I said, there's nothing to apologize. You just won over your bad voice. And that's how
Yeah.
we define it with him. But also, I'm doing that because I know who he is. It may not be a fit for every child, but for him, it works 100% of
Right.
the
Yeah, it's very
Amazing.
interesting to see also how different your children are, how different I was from my siblings, and to have to, I was raised in the world where everybody had the same rules until you didn't. So, like, I was a girl and my brother was a boy. So I was not allowed to do things that he was, simply because of my
time. Hmm.
biological makeup. Not whether I was the more responsible one or not, it didn't matter. Whereas we don't raise our kids that way. Our kids have different rules because they're different people. We talk to them
Right.
differently. We have different allowances. Like, and you go back to like I like a lot of pattern interrupts, because our brain forms these pathways. And unless we give it some other way to take, it's going to go on that path.
Right.
It's going to do what we've always done,
Yeah.
unless we consciously give it something else to do. So when you say, I give my child a hug, I read something yesterday that said, like, the science of hugs, it takes 4 hugs a day for survival, 8 hugs
Mhm.
a day to sustain your current state, and 12 hugs a day to grow. And I look back and I'm like, okay, well, I was maybe surviving. And I look at my kids, maybe I mean, I don't recall that and that being a thing in our family. And my children, I am so affectionate. And only recently, that's just how I've drawn to be as a mother. But now I'm like, ooh, science is backing it. Great. But it also like that hug of like, let's breathe. Let's take a moment. Let's pattern interrupt. And then let's take a different path and see how that goes. And maybe it's the wrong one, maybe it's the right one, but we won't know unless we try.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been, I don't know. For me, I feel like I'm very much finally into my purpose driven life. I have finally gotten to my purpose. And that's because for the first time since I can remember as a child, I am no longer in survival mode. I've been in survival mode my whole life. And a lot of people with trauma are you don't realize it. And that's where, people talk about imposter syndrome. But for me, the way I see it, it's not imposter syndrome. You're in self-sabotage. And so when you understand that self-sabotage is because your body does not feel safe, your body's in fight or flight unless it's in the chaos you grew up in. So to sit here and be in peace feels unnatural in my body. So it took a couple of years to be in that peaceful state and for that to be the safe one, not the chaos. So chaos was peaceful, chaos was normal. Whereas now, after doing this work and unpacking some of these things and also like putting in the daily rituals. So I have something I read in the morning, every morning, like some devotional. It's not a religious based devotional, but so I have a reading every morning. I take the dogs on a walk 3 days a week. And, you start to do these things for yourself, setting boundaries and putting yourself first. And all of a sudden your basis, like your home base of feeling gets evened out a little bit. And that opens the door for you to grow. Find those 12 hugs a day. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So
I love that you brought that up because Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that a lot too, that like, and it's not just like on a cellular level, our bodies get used to like, the stress response. And so to not have like stress or trauma or, chaos around us, our cells begin to feel very unsafe, even if we're doing something that is good for us.
Yes.
Going forward. So I think that that's so important to recognize. And I think that's why personal growth can feel so uncomfortable, especially at first, because you're putting yourself in responses or in situations where it's not going to feel safe at first. So I think that's so like key to understanding.
I think people confuse familiarity with safety. Because if you
Yeah.
grow up in an unsafe environment, then that feels familiar.
Right. Exactly.
So you're not
Yes.
like if you grow and you're trying to do something different, you're going to be triggered. You're going to feel unsafe. You have to feel it and then find a way to tell your brain, this is my new normal. This is where I'm going now. This is what we are going to deem as safe. And you have to do it over and over and over again until that's the new neural pathway that has formed. Right. And everything you do, whether it's what you eat, it's how you move your body, it's your sleep. I didn't sleep for like 24 years, and I'm not joking. I had insomnia since I was 15. Only in the last 3 months have I started to sleep. Life changing. So it's in everything we do because our bodies are just so miraculous. And so it's just learning. And I think the other thing to really remember is that what works for one person is not always going to work for the second.
Right.
So that's like how I have a hard time with some of the personal growth people that are out there that are like, if you pay $1,500 and follow my 4-step plan, I guarantee that you're going to get this. And I'm like, you're full of it. I'm sorry, but there's no way that 100,000 people are going to get the same place doing the same exact thing. It just doesn't work that way because there's no connection to the fact that we're all different.
There's no bio individuality. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's been new too for us exploring and explaining to my kids. What works for you is not going to work for you. Maybe you do great waking up at 6. My son wakes up at 6 a.m. every day before I wake up. And and he functions great. He gets up and he does all his stuff. My daughter likes to sleep till 7 and still gets her stuff done because she manages her time differently. They're
Right.
different people, so they do what works for them.
And I think a huge reason why I find you and your story, quote unquote, so inspiring is because you are able to navigate your soul's desire. You're able to expand it and take on a different route than the one that your parents took, with the pressure, with and despite of the false safety of needing to stay the same. So for listeners that kind of maybe follow your footsteps and want to come out and want to do things differently, what will be some advice that you can give them?
Yeah, that I think one is really going back to what we talk about, where when it comes to feeling safety, it's about you. It's not about what everybody else thinks. It's devastating to come out and hear it. Like when I came out, my mom's response was, "I'm going to have to learn how to love you again." And I said, "Well, that sounds like a you problem."
Right.
I can't tell you. I'm finally loving myself for the first time. So I can't sit here and wait for you to love me too. That's for you to do. And whether you choose to do it or not is up to you. Whether I allow you in my life or not is up to me. So I think step one is accepting that nobody's going to respond the way you think they are. I had friends that were supportive. Even my husband, I told my husband, my husband was the first person I told. And while we are divorced now, he was so supportive. I mean,
Wow.
how devastating to hear that your wife is this and you're breaking up with 2 kids. And he went with me to tell my mother. He held my hand while I told my mother.
Wow.
So I found you find safety where you receive safety, and then you hold a boundary where you don't. If it's not safe, then you don't have to be there. And if you're in an unsafe situation, reach out to someone. Whether you find someone online, reach out to me. I'm on Instagram. Message me. I've had numerous people message me and be like, "Hey, I just need someone to talk to that'll listen." I come from a very religious background. So it's hard to find safety. If you feel safe somewhere, then you're safe there. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to be socially deemed safety. If you find someone that feels safe, lean into that safety, and just and hold space for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think whether someone is trying to come out or someone is trying to take a different path in life, we all crave this approval and recognition. It's a quest, an ongoing quest for external validation, but that could also be that one thing that obstructs the path for us of receiving what we truly desire. So it's like an ongoing entanglement to how to let go of the need for recognition while making room for more, for my self growth and whatever else I may need in life. So the fact that you are still going through that, we all are going through that. We're all work in progress. We haven't reached any destination because it's an ongoing journey. But you being the inspiring self that you are, I think that gives a lot of hope and a lot of very practical tools to how to deal with change.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, the biggest change is to start, like you talk about external validation. Learning to validate yourself is so hard, because at least the way I was raised, and a lot of people were raised in a, you get attention when you do this. You get, it's an A-B situation. You do A, you get B. You get love when you get the grade or the car or whatever. And so there has to be some sense of awakening. And usually if you're to the point where you're coming out or making a change, you've had some sense of that awakening. And it's giving yourself permission to put yourself first. And my biggest thing that I ask people on my podcast at the end is kind of in tune with this. I say, listen, when you are not when you are not someone's daughter, someone's mother, someone's employee, someone's boss, whatever, when you are none of those things, what are you? What are you sans your purpose for other people? And most people are like, I have no idea. Because how would we know? We've never been told to find out who we are without the connection to something else, something external.
The labels. Yeah.
The labels. Yeah. It's so fine for me. I am a seeker. I am a an empath. I am a creator. Like those are my things. Those are me without anybody else. And so and that took me years to figure out, years. So it's not like I realized this and then I set the boundaries and then I'm healed. There is none of that. But spending the time to seek that and find it was a big part of my healing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like speaks so well too, to just the more that you move inward and like unpeel those pieces of like the labels that you've put on yourself, that other people have put on you, it just connects you in with that deeper piece of you. And when you are connected in with that piece, you don't need the external validation. And I feel like there's always layers to that as well, because the minute you think that I don't care what anybody thinks, like you're all of a sudden triggered because somebody said something about you and you're like, oh, thought I was healed there, but looks like
time for another layer
to do. Yeah. But it is. I mean, and that's why it's like it's always an ongoing process. But like, you know, the deeper you go, the more you can just authentically stand as you are. And yeah, it's okay. Yeah. And by doing that too, it's easier to hold those boundaries, and it's easier to you know, just energetically you're standing in your power as you. And
and letting go. There is no finish line, and most of us that are raised for external validation, there's always a goal to achieve, and then when you achieve it, there's another goal. There's no finish line to personal growth. There is only, this is the version of me now. I wonder what the next one will be. I'm curious. Let's find it. Not it's going to be this and I've decided and I'm going to follow A, B, and C and get there, because the path is never what you think it is. The path to getting some, you know, when people talk about manifesting, one of the biggest keys to manifesting is to let go of the how. You don't get to control the how. Our higher power controls the how. So if you have somewhere you want to go, whether it's personal growth, whether it's making money, whether it's a relationship, I don't care. You don't get to control the how, because we're not actually in control. You know, we're making decisions down here, but we're led from a higher power. And when you find that alignment and realize, I will just keep seeking. The rest of my human experience will be seeking, because I will always be seeking for more in here, not out there. I will continue to seek deeper and deeper within. And that's the beauty of it. Once you sit there and you're like, fall in love with that part of it, it opens up a whole other door, because you're not trying to check a box. There is no box to check. There's only deeper love, deeper understanding, deeper curiosity.
Right. And bioenergetically speaking, you will attract the people like your wife who would say, yes, of course. What do you need from me to help you be your best version? So you are the responsible for your self-love, and you're also responsible later on with your frequency to summon those events on those people that will help you elevate to your next level, per se.
That's why it's like, the more you take care of yourself, the better your life gets. That's the backwards. People think, oh, you take care of everyone else, you make your perfect life. I'm like, no, I find my perfect me, and everything else comes with it, because it's the law of attraction. And that's how I work in marketing. You know, when I talk to my clients, I go, listen, I don't run a bunch of ads. We do law of attraction marketing. We create things that people connect with, and then they connect with you and they become your client, your customer, whatever. It's all attraction. We are going to act as if I am there, act as if, like, feel it. And those things come naturally. And some people get really freaked out when it starts to happen, because they're like, it's so weird, like the synchronicity. And I saw this and then this happened. I'm like, yeah, man, we're training our reticular activating system. We're getting more aligned, and those things just come naturally. And when you're aware of it, it's very powerful. It's very cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. Those subtle energies that we can be in control of are fascinating. I just finished a meditation the other day. The way that I do my meditation, I do it in our sauna. So we got infrared sauna that was on sale, and I got it for my Mother's Day gift. I was like, I don't need no presents. This is going to be the present for everyone. And so I sat down in the infrared sauna, and this is where I do my meditation. This is, mommy's time and whatnot. And I did a meditation about abundance. I did 20 minutes about abundance. Literally, I came out of the sauna and I got this strange email with a job proposition for me through someone that I don't even know how they got to meet. Like the whole thing was like, I just manifested a new job.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
And then the work is, don't doubt it. The work is, you are worthy of massive compensation for what you know your gifts are to be. That rewiring within self, because as I said, we have that duality within us. We have that, oh, am I worthy? Heck yeah, you're worthy. Am I going to get it? Heck yeah. So for me, it's like, yeah, no, just receive. Just receive. You asked, now learn to receive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, people get so freaked out sometimes with manifesting. They think it's super woo-woo. And I go, oh no, man. Like, I mean, you study for a test and then you get a good grade on the test. It makes sense because you increased your brain, not because you found and got the answers to the test, because you sat there and said, okay, I'm going to do. So for me, my manifesting is, you set what your goal is or whatever you want to manifest. And then you release the how, you feel as if, and then you take inspired action. And I think that's a step a lot of people skip, is the inspired action. Like when something comes to you, you don't go, oh, this doesn't seem right. You go, oh man, look what came to me because of where I'm at, because of what the work I've done. And this came to me, and then go for it. Just go for it.
Right. Don't worry about the how. Just be clear about your intention. Don't worry about the how. You have one source, different channels. Just be ready to receive.
Yeah. And just being able to be aligned and have that faith, like it's going to come. It'll get there. I don't have to decide when or how, but it'll come, and I'll be ready when it does.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. Yeah. Quantum physics is all about that. And even now you have a whole genre of integrative quantum physics in medicine, how they are seeing the unseen of the subtle energetic aspects of the individual and use that in order to grasp different qualities of information. So it's all about qualified data. It's really fascinating. We are so much more powerful than we give ourselves credits for.
Yeah. And there's just so much opportunity out there when you release the control.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been hard too, because I'm very much like, I've always had to make things happen and I control, and I've always been a boss and a leader and whatever. But man, when you release the control, there's just so much more room for growth and knowledge and feelings and joy and everything else. So it's it's definitely, I will just put a disclaimer out there. Boundaries are not easy. Personal growth is not easy. It's not meant to be easy. Things, when people talk about like manifesting is meant to be easy, because when you release control and you have the faith that things are going to happen, it is easy because you're not controlling it. It's not easy to sit there and love yourself harder until you do it, and then it becomes easier.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that we refer to parents a lot, and I have to mention that it's a question that I have. Is it the fact that you are because of how your parents were, or is it you are who you are despite of your upbringing? So what would you say to that?
I've toggled back and forth with this. I think I am the way I am because that's how I'm supposed to be. In the beginning of my parenting, before I did a lot of this personal work, everything was, I'm doing this because my parents didn't. I want my kids to have what I didn't. I don't want them to experience the things that I experienced. I want them to feel safe and loved. It was very like, I am never going to be my mother. Sure. In some of the work that I've been doing more recently, it's kind of a release from her having a responsibility in it at all. She has a role in my childhood, and I do fully believe that there are traumas that pass down. What do we call epigenetics? Or I fully believe in that. I do, but I think that I've taken her out of the equation at this point. It's not how I was done. And I hate it when people are like, well, when I was a kid, my parents said I walked 6 miles. No one gives a crap. I'm sorry, because that's not that kid's experience. And it
Right,
doesn't like
right.
it is a
It's a
I
different
think that when
soul. It's just a different soul.
it's a different soul, and while my parents impacted me, and I know that that passes down through generations, I can choose whether or not they have a
Yes,
role in how I impact my children, or I can just say, hey, I'm choosing to be aligned with me in myself and my child. And it's not a they did this or in spite of this. It's now a where do we want to go? Where
right,
how do you want to feel? Like what legacy do we want to leave with our kids, and what relationship do I want to have with them in 20 years?
exactly.
So I think for me, it originally started very much like in spite of my parents, I'm gonna be this great mom, or I'm gonna show up in this way. And now it has nothing to do with them. I think it's a very take the good and leave the rest. So I do pass on to my kids when there's something positive that I learned from my parents, like, hey, this is where I got this. I want you to know why I feel this way. But there's a lot that's like, we're going to do things this way because I've learned A, B, and C, and this is what I think we should do. How do you feel about it? You know, and we are very communicative with our kids. So like my daughter wanted to start doing chores. I made her interview for a job in the house, and she signed a contract and understood what her responsibilities were. And but in addition to that, we did things like when she had a week that she was sick, we said, okay, what I want you to learn right now, what's important is your health, not the clean bathroom. So because our school systems are not going to teach them to take care of themselves. They're not made for that. So that starts here. And those are things that had nothing to do with my family of origin or my parents or how I was raised. It's simply this feels right.
Yeah. And whether we're talking about parents or partners, they
Mhm.
are born with their own capacity. They're born with their own vessel that is either capable of or incapable of. And I believe once we realize that we are deserving of more, then this is no longer the vessel we need to feed off of. Then this
Mhm.
is our empowerment to spread our wings. And we always say, oh, I left my boyfriend because XYZ. He was incapable of giving you what you needed. So instead of having resentment, and yes, anger can be a catalyst to moving you forward, but holding anger for a long time is very damaging to your liver, your kidneys, your internal
Yes.
trauma will be trapped in it. That's why I always want to mention that having grace and compassion after you do your inner work is extremely essential in moving you forward and not in anger or resentment towards people that you left behind, whether it's your parents or your partners.
And it's grace or compassion for them, but also for the version of you that did the best that you could.
Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, you only can do better when you know better. So when people start to heal, there's a common trend that they're like, oh my gosh, I've missed out on so much. I could have been this. I could have done that. I could have felt. There's a lot of like loss and mourning of what could have been. And that's where I think that personal grace comes in. You have to have grace with yourself. Like you did the best you could. For me, so many things I could have done, but I did the best that I could. I survived. I
Mm-hmm.
survived where I was there. So, and now we go forward.
Now you're thriving.
Now
Yeah.
you're thriving.
From surviving to thriving.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love it. That's perfect. And and on that same realm, there's like a beautiful place where you can begin to get, I think, where you see that all of those struggles and the negative people or situations that came into your life, you can find grace and compassion, because without that contrast, without that darkness, how would you have known where the light is? And so it's like being able to like love that aspect in that way, like not saying, it's not a cop out or like a, oh yeah, I love you even though you did something terrible to me, but it really is this true, like I can love, I can find a beauty in it, in that it allowed me to, it was my catalyst for growth.
Yeah. And you
Right.
can really only find that once you're in a place of healing. So,
Right.
you know, a lot of people, a lot of the business podcasts I talk about, they're like, you can teach when you are 1% ahead, 10% ahead. You don't have to be fixed and perfect. And, you know, especially in personal growth, because there is no end, there is no fixed, there is no done.
Right.
But when you're 10% ahead, so, you know, I talk on my podcast and in my work, I talk to people who were me a year ago, because
Right.
that's what they need.
Right.
I'm that for them. And then I'll continue to grow and they can grow with me and things like that. So yeah.
Mhm.
I think Maya
Not,
Angelou said it, no? That teach what you know, or you gather
I
the
think it
information, now teach. Was it Maya Angelou?
something, yeah, she has a quote that definitely, I couldn't
She
She has a
recall
quote.
it.
she has the quote, if you once you know better,
You do
can do
better.
better.
Yeah.
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 Very
Yeah.
much so.
It's some, yeah. Which is, yeah.
Yeah.
Very. Mhm.
So anything else you want to share with our listeners, Diana? And where can they find you?
So everything going forward is Unlearning University. So on Instagram, Facebook, website, Unlearning University. We'll be releasing new podcast episodes starting January 2023. And they're going to be taking a little bit of a different road. I'm opening up to my clients for boundaries coaching and things like that. So that's the path that I'm taking. I still do digital marketing because as an entrepreneur, you have to pay the bills and find your purpose at the same time. So, yeah, but I mean, I would just encourage people to give themselves a little grace and love themselves. Like you have, I'm giving you permission right now to set a boundary. I'm giving you permission to stop doing what doesn't serve you. If you need someone to give you permission, this is it. You have permission. Love yourself a little bit more, set a boundary, give yourself some safety.
I love that. And I did find a quote
Mhm.
from Maya Angelou. It's when you learn, teach, when you get, give.
Oh, I love that. I
yeah, I
hadn't
don't
heard
think
that one.
I hadn't either. And I really love that.
I love
Yeah.
her.
The power
Mhm.
of Google. The power of Google.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been such a good conversation.
Thank you so much,
We've
Diana.
enjoyed
You're
it.
amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, you guys.
All
See you
right.
next time. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.